Hey everyone, welcome back to my kitchen. My name is Mindy Banks. I'm the Flip Flop Chef. Today I want to share a very special recipe with you guys. It's called Angel Biscuits, and it's my grandmother Dorothy Thomason's recipe. So my sister had this beautiful board made for me, I think it was for Christmas, and it's just something that I love. I have it on display in my house, and I'm going to share this recipe with you guys today. Something really special is I actually inherited my grandmother's T-ball infuser, which is what she used to cut her biscuits. So that's what we're going to use today. And my sister had this made so that I could hook this on there and keep it all together. So I'm going to try to keep it together. And this is my grandmother and my granddaddy shown in this picture. And I miss them both very, very much. But let's go ahead and make these biscuits, okay? I'm going to set this aside so I don't mess it up. All right, so the first thing I need to do is I need to add the yeast to our warm water. I need to do that pretty quickly because I don't want this water to cool down anymore. So I'm going to do this step first. If this is the first time that you're watching one of my videos, I hope you'll click subscribe while you're here. And also, be sure to go to theflipflopchef.com and join my recipe community. That's where you're going to find this recipe, thousands of others, and I also have a giveaway every single Friday. So I'm going to just kind of let this yeast work in that hot water. I like to just give it a little bit of a stir, and then we're just going to set this aside and let it blend. All right, so let's get these ingredients together. So I'm going to be referencing this beautiful board that my sister had made for me. I'm going to try to not knock it over, but I've got most of the ingredients prepped out. So we need 5 cups of regular all-purpose flour, which I have right here, and I'm going to add 3 teaspoons or 1 tablespoon of baking powder. I'm picking up the wrong one here. So I've got 1 tablespoon of baking powder, and then we're going to do a teaspoon of baking soda and a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to add that, and we're going to also add 3 teaspoons of sugar. So 1, 2, 3. Now, if you happen to be watching this video and you knew my grandmother Thomason, I would love to hear from you in the chat. I know there's a lot of you guys that follow me that knew her and have probably eaten her angel biscuits. So to give you guys a little side story, when I was a kid, I guess I was around 2 or 3 years old, I can't remember, my grandparents moved into the basement of the house I grew up in. And so I was able to grow up with them in the house and smell all of the most wonderful things that my grandmother cooked downstairs, and really just such cherished memories. So what she did is she mixed all of these things together, and she used a sifter. Now, I don't have her sifter, and this one's kind of small, but if you've never seen one of these, you just kind of press on the little handle on the side, and it whisks or sifts this together. So what we're going to do is I'm actually just going to scoop out some of this, and I'll show you how you can whisk this or sift this. So this is how my grandmother, and probably yours too, got her flour ready for her biscuit recipe. So we've got the 5 cups of flour, 3 teaspoons of baking powder. We have the soda, the salt, and the sugar, and we're just gonna sift this all together. I actually found this sifter at Goodwill, and I think I may have just broken it, which shows how that's not like the greatest thing. It was a brand new one, but yeah, I think I broke it. So glad I don't sell this, right? We're gonna use a whisk for the rest. That was the second option I was gonna give you, is that if you don't have a sifter, just use a whisk. So I'm just gonna whisk the rest of this using our mini whipper. You could use our regular stainless steel whisk. We're gonna whisk all this together. It doesn't do as good of a job as what I have here in the bowl. If you could see closely, you could see there's a significant difference in what they look like, but most people don't have a sifter anyways. So you can use one of Pampered Chef's whisks or whatever whisk that you have, and whisk the dry ingredients together. So I'm just gonna transfer all of this into the same bowl, and then we're gonna get our buttermilk ready. Now, my grandmother always had buttermilk in her refrigerator. I don't always have buttermilk, and I'll tell you guys a funny story. Let me get this water measured here. We're gonna need 2 cups. I think it's 2 cups. Yes, 2 cups of buttermilk. So 2 cups of buttermilk is needed for this recipe. But when I moved to Florida, which actually the day I'm recording this video is actually, it's been 4 years today since I moved to Florida. And the first thing I did when I got here is I dropped the kids off. Keith had already been here for about 10 days. Dropped the kids off. I had a little bit of time before the movers made it to the house. So first stop, I know you can believe this, is I went to Aldi and I bought all the groceries that we needed to start up a new house. And I was like looking and looking and looking for buttermilk. And I asked the guy that worked at Aldi, I was like, hey, could you please help me find the buttermilk? And he was like, oh, that's a seasonal product. We only have that around the holidays. And this Georgia girl was like, excuse me, what did you say? What do you mean it's a seasonal product? And so there's a joke that if you live in South Florida, the further you go south, the farther you get from the south. And so I learned that the very first day, because there's not a lot southern about South Florida, but I still love living here. And I get to be the southern here in South Florida. So there are a few places I have now found in Sarasota that do have buttermilk all the time, which is great. But I've got to where I buy this container of cultured buttermilk blend. And this is great because I keep it in the refrigerator. And then I don't ever have to worry about wasting buttermilk. So to make 1 cup of buttermilk with this, you mix 4 tablespoons of this powder with 1 cup of water. So I've got 2 cups of water in there. And I'm going to just take my mini whipper again. And I'm just going to whisk this together so that we have buttermilk, okay? And I know you can use regular milk, and there are ways that you can make buttermilk, adding vinegar or lemon juice. I just prefer doing it this way because it's just so easy. You just measure out what you need and then you're good to go. All right, so I'm gonna let this sit. Our yeast is also blooming nicely, so this will be ready for the next step. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to add in the shortening. So my grandmother used Crisco. This is very common to be used in biscuits, and it is just so good. I know not everybody likes using vegetable shortening, but try it, and I think you'll love this recipe. So this is our measure all cup. This is actually the very first Pampered Chef product I ever owned. If you could see closely, this has the Pampered Chef hen logo, which is our original logo. My mom bought this measuring cup for me in 1995 when I went to my very first Pampered Chef party with her. And the only reason I went with her is because she told me I could drive her. So I got in the car, drove her to the Pampered Chef party, and while I was there, let me tell you, my wheels were turning. I realized that the lady that was doing the demonstration was essentially getting paid to eat, and my 15-year-old brain just thought that was the coolest thing ever. Let me tell you, I'm 43 now, and my 43-year-old brain still loves getting paid to eat. So I like to use this, and this was something my mom bought for me specifically to measure peanut butter and Crisco, because apparently I wasn't the best dishwasher as a teenager, but I loved to bake cookies, and spritz cookies were one of my favorite things to make. And so getting the shortening out of a measuring cup, all that greasy stuff, after you use it, my mom's like, I'm buying this for you. So I need 1 cup. You pull the plunger down to the 1 cup measure marking, fill it with your ingredient, and you just scrape it off. And look at this, you can get all of that right off. And so one side is for liquids, one side is for dry ingredients. So I'm using the Crisco vegetable shortening. Now, my grandmother used her hands, as far as I remember, to mix all this together. Pampered Chef used to sell a pastry blender, so if you happen to have this, then you could use this to blend your flour in with your shortening, or if you're using butter, this is a great tool for that. So it fits the inside of the bowl. I wish I could sell you one of these. Maybe it will show up in the outlet at some point in time. I'm just gonna tap off some of that shortening, but you're just gonna keep clumping this together. You just want to cut in the shortening. That's what we're doing here. And using a pastry blender is the best way to do that. Now the next step, we already did dissolve the yeast in the warm water, and we're gonna add it with the buttermilk in just a minute when I finish getting this nice and blended. Then we're gonna roll it out on our silicone pastry mat here, and we're gonna cut them into biscuits. Now, every Sunday, this is pretty much my entire life. My parents, my family lived upstairs and my grandparents lived in the basement. And on Sundays, my grandparents had Sunday dinner after church. And it wasn't just us, like cousins and aunts and uncles. It was just like a thing. Everybody came over on Sunday afternoon to eat at grandmother and granddaddy's house. And it was just the best. And so I loved all of the perks of having them live in the house. with us. So I've got this almost incorporated. You want it to be kind of crumbly, right? So every Sunday, my grandmother would make the biscuits and she baked them in her toaster oven. So we're actually gonna use small pans like this. This is part of our modular sheet pan, and this is how she baked them in her toaster oven. Now they're super small. They're not like the biscuits that you're used to. Remember I said we're gonna use this T-ball infuser. If you happen to have Pampered Chef's old biscuit cutter set, then you would wanna use the smallest. So here's the sizes. We don't sell this anymore, but you would wanna use that small size to make these little tiny biscuits. After she baked them, she would take, I'm sure it was margarine in a tub, she would take a spoon and she would open every biscuit and she would put literally a whole spoonful of butter on the inside. So if you've ever eaten her biscuits and you wondered why they were so good, it's because she drenched them in butter or margarine. I use butter, I don't use margarine for anything, but let me tell you, when you were hungry and you were waiting on somebody else who was running late for lunch, it was really nice to be able to go in the kitchen and sneak a little biscuit drenched in butter while we waited for everybody else to get there. All right, so now I'm gonna just, don't push from the bottom because they are a little bit sharp, so be careful if you do that. I just kind of tap that, and we're gonna add the yeast and we're gonna add the buttermilk. So let's see. So see our yeast, I don't know if you can tell, but it's kind of like, it's bloomed and it's nice and bubbly. So we're gonna just add that in. I'm gonna scrape this with our scraper. I'm just gonna mix this and we're gonna add our buttermilk. I have just a little bit more buttermilk than I need since it takes 2 cups of water to make the buttermilk. And so when you add that powder, you actually end up with a little bit more. So we're just gonna mix this together. And then if I need any more buttermilk, I have a little bit left in that cup. So we're gonna mix, 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 get our mixture together. I actually feel like I might need a little bit more flour, which I have some sitting here, so that's okay if I need to add a little bit more. Make sure I'm not missing anything here. Nope, we got all of our ingredients in, and I am gonna add a little bit of flour to this and hopefully still have enough to flour my my pastry mat. I couldn't think of what I wanted to do there. My bulk container is in the pantry. All right, a little bit more. I typically do not make biscuits homemade, which is also another shocking thing for a Georgia girl to not make homemade biscuits. But you know, we all have things that we like to make homemade, right? All right, whoops, I have a bug flying around here. Okay, so now, whew, excuse me guys, sorry. It's mosquito season here, right? I don't know what that was, if it's a fly or a mosquito. I think it's a mosquito, and they like me. So it says pampered, not perfect, right? Okay, so I've almost got the consistency that I want. I didn't want it quite as wet as I had it, so let's get this mixed up a little bit more. And this is one of the things, if you're used to following a recipe, don't be afraid to add more, make it your own. Let's see. All right, I feel like that's good. Hopefully that's a good consistency. I'm gonna sprinkle this flour so that it doesn't stick. And this pastry mat is silicone. Move this out of the way here. And then what I'm gonna do, I should have grabbed my bench scraper. Let's just scoop this out. Try not to make a mess here. All right, so we're going to get this nice and floured so that it doesn't stick. And then I'm gonna use this tapered rolling pin. We're gonna roll this out. Whoops, still need a little bit more flour. It's a little sticky. There we go. Get this rolled out, and you can decide on how thin or how thick you wanted the biscuits to be. Remember, we added that yeast, so it is gonna help them rise. So I think this is a good start. Let me wash my hands, get some of this flour and dough off. And then, like I said, you could use Pampered Chef's biscuit cutters or whatever other biscuit cutters you have. I knew I was going to be covered in flour. I'm going to tell you guys another funny story. I'm going to wash this infuser. So years ago, I was 16 and I worked at the Stockbridge Dwarf House in Stockbridge, Georgia. And my job, I actually graduated high school early, so I got up at I opened the store, so I was there at 4 a.m. Well, me and another lady, her name was Miss Marie, and she was the biscuit lady. She came in, she made the biscuits in the morning, and when the restaurant opened around 6, I started having customers come in, and I started waiting tables. So I've never been to a Chick-fil-A that's full service. We do have those in Georgia. And I'm going to spray this pan with a little bit of baking pan. If it has the flour in it, it's okay. I just won't use the regular pan. And I'm going to start cutting these out. But anyways, usually our customers that came in were, I think I want these a little thicker, but we'll go with it. They would come in early in the morning and they would eat their breakfast. And one day, I do want these thicker. I'm going to fold this. One day, this guy that I waited on all the time, he said, "Hey, does your boyfriend work here?" And I was like, "No, why?" And he said, "Well, you should probably go clean yourself off." He said, "You have a flour handprint on your backside." And sure enough, Miss Marie had loved on me a little bit that morning, as she did most mornings, and she left her handprint behind. So at least I don't have flour on my backside today, right? All right, I'm gonna take these and I'm just gonna stack them. We'll see how that turns out. But I actually wanted these to be a little bit, yeah, that's a little bit better. I want them to be thicker, and that yeast is gonna help them rise. And so this is the T-ball infuser that my grandmother Thomason used to use. If you know her, especially if you went to church with her. So she used to go to Liberty Baptist Tabernacle in Stockbridge, and everybody there knew who she was. If it was your birthday, she would bring you a plate of goodies. They included pound cakes, lemon bars. There's no telling what all that she put in there. I'll tell you a funny story. I actually used to not like, I'm gonna see if I can get a third row in here. I did not like icing on cake. I know, what was wrong with me then? I do now. And I didn't like, she used to make the best banana bread, but I didn't like it with pecans, and I still don't love it with pecans. I'll eat it, but she used to make me my own little banana bread in this little square pan. I don't know what happened to that pan. And it didn't have nuts. So she would add the nuts to her banana bread mixture after she added everything else. So she could make me my own little pan of banana bread. Isn't that just so sweet? My grandmother was also one of my customers, so she was at my first Pampered Chef party, and I actually still have her receipt. I saved it all these years. And so I have her handwriting. It's really great. But anyways, she was a big supporter of my Pampered Chef business, and she had lots of Pampered Chef products. So this is how her pan of angel biscuits looked. I'm gonna bake these up. I'm doing it in the oven rather than the toaster oven. I could pop these in the air fryer, but I'm gonna make more. I'm gonna finish cutting all these, get them in the oven, and I'm gonna get to have a delicious biscuit in a little bit, but I'll come back and I'll show you the finished product. So this is gonna bake at 450. It just says until browned. So if you have recipes from your grandmother, they probably have directions like that. It doesn't tell you how long. So I'll let you know how long this takes when I come back. So stay tuned, I'll be back in a bit. All right, everyone, I am back, and the 2 pans of angel biscuits that I cooked in the toaster oven sized pans from our modular sheet pan set, these took 15 minutes. So if my grandmother was here, she would brush butter on the tops, and she would put a spoonful of butter inside of each of these biscuits, and they literally just melt in your mouth. So I can't wait to do that when I'm off camera. I also wanted to show you, I haven't baked these yet, but I took a standard biscuit size biscuit cutter and went ahead and cut some larger biscuits, and I'll cook these. They're gonna take more than 15 minutes because they're larger, but probably 20 minutes So if you make them larger, start with that and check on them and see how they turn out. But I hope that you enjoyed this video and learning a little bit about my grandmother Thomason, and I hope you'll try the recipe. I'll make sure to post it in my recipe community. You can find that by going to theflipflopchef.com. Click the button at the top of the page to join my recipe community. You'll have access to this recipe, thousands of others, and my weekly giveaway. So thanks for watching today. See you next time. Bye, everyone.